Pokemon is fucking weird because we can hear a statement like poison, heal, fling, toxic orb, acrobatics, gliscor next to galvanized life orb, explosion, alolan, golem, and people will be like, no way, how did he build this? That's crazy. Like, what does this even fucking mean, dude?
I thought that video was hilarious, but I think it's also a perfect jumping off point to talk a bit about the syntax of competitive Pokemon, because if you don't know about it, it might seem a bit strange. Now, when we're describing a competitive Pokemon, we really want to zero in on the identity of that Pokemon, right? And really focus on what it can do on the battlefield. And oftentimes that looks like naming the ability of that Pokemon first. So in the example of Poison, Heal, Fling, Toxic Orb, Acrobatics, Gliscor, Poison Heal is the ability, and it's coming first providing a lot of information to a competitive player, because Poison Heal means that when the Pokemon is poisoned, it gains health rather than losing it, and that differentiates it from, say, Sandveld Gliscor, and gives the competitive player really a good idea of how this Pokemon might be used or what situations it might thrive in. Now that we know the ability, we need to know what moves and items complement that ability. And here with the Gliscor, we first see Fling Toxic Orb. And this is an interesting example because Fling is a move where your Pokemon throws its item at your opponent. And Toxic Orb is an item that a Pokemon holds that immediately poisons it, which usually is bad, but you have Poison Heal. So in this case, the Gliscor is getting poisoned by Toxic Orb and then flinging it at its opponent, throwing it at its opponent. And once it uses Fling, the Toxic Orb hits its opponent and poisons the opponent also. But you can fling really any item, and different items have different effects when you fling. So a lot of players will feel the need to specify what they're flinging and what effect this will have on their opponent. And this is in pretty stark contrast to our second example, Galvanized Life Orb, Explosion, alolan, Golem, where we have an item in Life Orb similar to how Toxic Orb is an item, right? If you hold a Life Orb, you boost your Pokemon's attacks, but it saps their health in the process. But in our second example, we see Life Orb coming before the move, Explosion, where the Pokemon blows itself up, which is the reverse in our first example, right? We have move and then item. And this is because Life Orb is acting really more like an adjective in our second example, right? It's modifying the noun that is Explosion, because we know that Life Orb boosts the attacks of the Pokemon. So when we say Life Orb Explosion, we know it's not a regular explosion, it's an extra powerful explosion. And if we were to reverse that Explosion Life Orb, that really doesn't make any sense to me, right? Like, the item is not exploding, the Pokemon is exploding. Now, back to our first example, we have the second move in Acrobatics. And Acrobatics is a move that doubles in power when you lose your item. So it makes sense to put it after Fling Toxic Orb, because once you fling your Toxic Orb, you no longer have an item, and that's when Acrobatics is at its full power. So a person using this particular Gliscor is likely to use Fling first and then Acrobatics after that. Now, another interesting piece is that both of these Pokemon have 4 moves, but we're not really going into detail on all of them, right? We're really going into the main order of operations, right? This Gliscor probably has 2 other moves, maybe Earthquake or something else, but what we describe here is really the main identity in order of operations, right? We send Gliscor in, it has Poison Heal, and it's always going to have Poison Heal unless there's extenuating circumstances. It's going to fling its Toxic Orb. Once it loses the Toxic Orb, it's no longer going to be able to use Fling, and then its main mode of offense is going to be Acrobatics after that, even if it has 2 other moves. And similarly, our alolan Golem has, in all likelihood, 3 other moves, but what we're describing here is our main mode of attack. We've got Galvanize, which is our ability that turns normal type moves into electric type moves. We've got Life Orb Explosion, which is a super powerful explosion that's going to be electric type because of Galvanize. And then after that, we're done, right? Once you explode, you can't battle no more, right? So it's not really a need to really describe everything else, right? We're exploding and then we see you next battle. So yeah, if you're not familiar, it might seem strange, right? There's some grammatical and syntactical intricacies here, but really this is just a succinct way to describe what a Pokemon really does.